this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. Today, we're going to be getting a little bit deeper into the Hunter Biden emails because the story, though not being covered the way that it should be, also isn't seeming to go away. And I feel like it could if there wasn't something to it. We've been talking about this since probably about last Thursday. I think last Wednesday is when the Post article actually broke. And a few things happened. One, the absolute blackout on social media was frightening and unusual, and would say that this article doesn't have anything to do with fact. The problem is that since that point, facts have been coming forward and more information is being leaked. And the craziest thing about it is the Biden campaign and Hunter Biden's people haven't refuted any of it. They haven't said that these emails are fake. They haven't said that the computers aren't his. None of the facts of this case have been refuted by the campaign. And it's only getting worse as it goes on. And as we've already talked about, Joe Biden has already called a lid on essentially the remainder of the week until Thursday for the debates. So we're not getting any answers out of him. Maybe we'll talk to the campaign a little bit and get something there. But what we know right now is the computer showed up at a shop in Delaware, and we now have Hunter Biden's signature on the work forms for those computers. That's obtained by Fox News. Whether or not you believe Fox is up to you, but those signatures exist apparently. The work was done. They took care of it. They got the hard drives. The hard drives were turned over to Giuliani and the FBI. Now, the FBI hasn't really said anything about this. 50 different intelligence officials came forward and said this smells like Russia. Now, they offered no proof of that. They said specifically that we have no proof that this exists, but it just feels like a Russia thing. However, the director of national intelligence came out and said nobody in the intelligence community feels like this because we have no proof of anything like that. There's nothing that says that this is a Russian disinformation situation. The Biden campaign has said it's a Russian disinformation campaign, but they won't disavow the emails themselves. So we're stuck in this really tricky spot of understanding the language. If this is actually Russian disinformation, which disinformation would mean that the information is inaccurate and the Russians are just putting it out there to kind of spoil things, but they're also not disavowing the emails. So that tends to say that these emails are legitimate. Now, it's possible, perhaps even likely, that the Russians obtained these emails illegally through a hacking service or something along those lines and are now distributing them, which is egregious, but doesn't discount the validity of those emails. So we need to find out more. We need to know what's going on. What's also interesting is that apparently the third member of the Hunter Biden, Devon Archer crew that were a part of a lot of these different organizations in Kazakhstan and Ukraine and China has apparently given the feds access to his Gmail account. He's already in jail. He's already serving time. He's already got problems of his own. But he gave the feds access to his Gmail with 26,000 emails between Hunter Biden, Devon Archer, and all sorts of business associates, which could lend a little bit more light on this whole situation. So not only do we have the email between Hunter Biden and the third highest executive officer at the Ukraine saying essentially, thank you for hooking me up with your father. I appreciate the meeting. Fairly innocuous, no big deal. Although it would tend to say that Joe Biden knows a little bit more about Hunter's dealings in Ukraine than he initially let on. But the next email that bounced back and forth between China, which is a little bit more scary, saying essentially, we've got 20% set aside for H, in this case Hunter. Those have been recognized by a third party that was also on the email saying, yes, they're talking about Hunter and they're talking about Joe Biden. 20% set aside for H with 10% cut out for the big man. The big man was Joe Biden. Now, if Joe Biden's actually making money off of these circumstances, whether it's Hunter Biden's doing or not, but if that money actually is making it to Joe Biden, that's going to be a huge problem. And as we dig a little bit deeper, maybe it turns out to be nothing. The scariest thing to me is that the Biden campaign could easily come forward and say, yes, emails are real. Hunter Biden was doing some things that probably weren't the best idea. Upon reflection, probably should have been curtailed, but what are you going to do? but we received nothing. We did nothing. There was no influence that was peddled, anything along those lines. Put a cap on it right now. It's over. But they're not doing that. And instead, they're running from it. And I think it's probably not because they're guilty. I think it's because they actually believe the media will do their cover for them. And to me, I think that's a lot more dangerous than refuting it or having to battle the accusations or the questions. It's the fact that the media generally isn't asking the questions. They're starting to hit a little bit more. There was a gentleman from CBS that came forward and asked a question before Biden went into his hole, and essentially Biden walked away. He wasn't going to answer the question. He said, "This is the type of question I always get from you, so I'm blowing it off." But they need to hold his feet to the fire. Now, whether or not this comes up in the presidential debate, I think is going to be paramount. If, as a moderator, this doesn't come up, you cannot call yourself unbiased. There's just no reason why this doesn't come up, even to knock it down, even to say, yeah, it's not true, what's not true. Like, give Joe Biden a chance to clear his name if you're unbiased. I will be on pins and needles to see if this actually happens on Thursday. Unfortunately, we will not have a show on Friday, so you'll have to wait until Monday to hear my recount of whatever happens at the presidential debate. But as of right now, this question needs to be asked and needs to be answered by the Biden campaign, or it's just going to continue getting worse. The second story, which I think is probably up there as far as scary when it comes to the current political tone, is a tweet from Robert Reich just a couple of days ago, where he said, "When this nightmare is over, we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It would erase Trump's lies, comfort those who've been harmed by his hatefulness, and name every official, politician, executive, and media mogul whose greed and cowardice enabled this catastrophe." Now, first off, somebody on the left who is screaming bloody murder at everything that Trump has done and the terrible things that he's doing, and pushing it as though it's akin to the Nuremberg trials after this, that everybody who's complicit needs to be brought to justice. What has Trump done that has been so bad, so egregious, as its Hitlerian counterpart would deem it necessary to out everybody who is a supporter and everybody who aided and abetted this awful, awful human being who was the president for the past 4 years? Tell me, what was done? What was so bad that this would be necessary to now start going after citizens and the regular people that just supported this guy? I think that this language is kind of part and parcel to where we are right now in our politics. It is so divided. It is so just galvanized in our corners that it's not about right and wrong. It's not about your side and my side. It's about good and evil. And I think both sides on the fringes kind of have some of that going. The problem is that Robert Reich is not fringe. He is not, a militia guy out in the middle of Michigan with a beard and a boonie and 500 pounds on top of him. Like, this is a well-respected liberal. And he's saying things like this that I think are just ginning up more and more animosity and hate, and not even necessarily hate for the candidate, but hate for the supporters and hate for the people that are surrounding that person. And I think that's very, very dangerous. And I'm going to go on record right now saying that I think Joe Biden's ideas are terrible. I think a lot of his policies are awful. I think the people that he's putting behind him to put those policies in order, from Bernie Sanders to AOC to Elizabeth Warren, I think they all have very dangerous and terrible ideas. But I'm not against any of their supporters. I think some of their supporters even follow some really dumb and dangerous ideas, but I don't think they're bad people. I don't think that in any way even Hillary supporters were bad people. I think they just have a political ideology that's different from mine, and I think we all need to start recognizing that there's a difference between having a point of view and purposely coming after you and doing something to you personally. That's not the same thing. The Trump people that are supporting are not trying to come after you personally. They're not trying to destroy your life. They're not trying to end you in any way. They just have a different idea about how this country should be run than you. And as much as your ideas are not cramming down death and hostility towards me, my views are not doing the same to you. So let's bring the temperature down as much as we possibly can, because things like this from Robert Reich are dangerous and could lead to some really terrible things regardless of which side wins in November. That's all I've got for today. We've got more coming tomorrow. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you like what you're hearing here, definitely subscribe either to the podcast. We're now on iHeartRadio. You can get us through Alexa by just asking for Drawn and Cornered, the latest episode. She'll play it for you. Just have to ask her. You can reach me at Drawn and Cornered, Drawn A-N-D Cornered at Gmail. You can reach me by leaving a comment down below. I appreciate some of the folks who've already been doing that. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.